knit, and my focus is on knitwear design and natural dyes primarily. My mom taught me when I was a kid, and I am a hardcore lefty, so she actually taught herself to knit left-handed and then taught me how to knit, and so I knit left-handed, which is a whole thing in and of itself. The best part was that a few years ago she was telling this story to a friend of hers, and her friend was like, why didn't you just sit in front of each other and then you can just mirror what the other person is doing? My mom was not so impressed with that because she realized, oh yeah, that would have been a lot easier. My mom was a knitter. Her mom taught her how to knit. My nanny knits. So I moved to the UK to do my master's, and while I was there I ended up working at a knitting shop. Then I just started kind of making my own designs. Like, I never published anything while I was there. It's just I started designing my own stuff. It was, fairly basic patterns at that point, but I ended up back in Winnipeg, and the summer that I was back coming back in the winter, Wolseley Wool was co-hosting a shawl design knit-along contest with Manitoba Fiber Festival. And so I entered a design, which was my double scoop pattern, and it won, and it all has just steamrolled from there. So double scoop is the thing that started it all off. People still knit it, which I find hilarious because it's been a few years and there are a lot of other patterns out there. But yeah, that was encouraging, having people who were really excited about it. Now fast forward a few years and I'm part of the coordinating team for Manitoba Fiber Fest, and I teach at Wolseley Wool, and I bought my house in order to be in close proximity to Wolseley Wool so that in the middle of winter I would still be encouraged to go to knit night. Like, it's definitely become a central part of my life, but it started off, business-wise at least, as mostly an accident. My business is absolutely an extension of me. The version of myself that I offer as a biz owner and on my business accounts is a lightly curated version of me as a human. My politics are very left-leaning. I'm queer, and I'm a witch, and I'm a hedge witch. So I use plants and stones for healing. I use my work with plants and stones and things and with the natural world as a process for self-care. And so that's kind of how I inject it into my business, is figuring out how do I use the tools that I use, which is working with stones, working with different plants in order to make tinctures or to put them into recipes, or pulling a tarot spread, which, do I think that a tarot spread is actually dictating my life? No, but I think that the way that I read a tarot spread is just bringing clarity to something that I've been subconsciously thinking of, and this is now me putting it into my conscious mind and being aware of it. So figuring out how to do that in a way that it's useful to others and accessible to others, and not like a scary thing. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. It's definitely not the way that a lot of people run their businesses, and it's definitely not the way that any sort of like capitalist corporation would recommend running a business, although maybe they would like try and do it in this like weird, creepy way that's like completely inauthentic. But yeah, it's working for me so far, I think. It's funny, there is this kind of like divide between the current new generation of knitwear designers, and we're usually very math oriented, and then the old school way of knitting was that you just had that skill set. Like, you knew this person is about this big, my gauge is always about this much, and so I'm just going to cast on this many stitches, and when I get to about this point, then I'll start decreasing. Thank goodness for YouTube, it will explain how to do things for you. Yeah, it's tricky, but I think it's great that it's coming back and is like a cool thing again, and people are doing it, because there's a lot of ways that we can be addressing fast fashion. Textiles are the second largest polluting industry in the world. So making people slow down, making them think, okay, if I'm going to spend the next 60 hours making this sweater, I want it to be out of materials that I really like, out of materials that are going to last. I will then mend it so that it is able to stay around for longer, because you didn't just go to the mall, pick it off a rack, and spend $20 on it. What I'm really enjoying right now is the fact that the fiber shed movement is kicking back into gear. And it's basically the local food movement, but for textiles. So you are working with fibers that have been grown and processed and that you are then using within a specific geographical footprint. And often the fiber sheds follow the concept of a watershed. So you're working within a specific geographical area that's close to home, which ultimately is kind of the ideal because you then are able to source your textiles in the most ethical and environmentally conscious way because you can physically go and see where they were gathered from. So within the north, then like furs and skins are also part of our textiles because if it's -40, you need fur around your face so that you don't die. And so, actually being able to go and speak with the hunters and find out how is the trapping happening and, seeing the way that they are processing the skins, actually being able to go and see, like speaking to the people, finding out, are they being compensated properly? Are their working conditions, up to labor code, and are they happy with those labor conditions? So like with Anna at Longway Homestead opening up a mill, that just opens up so much incredible possibility because right now the mills for us are either North Dakota, so you're then dealing with cross-border issues, or Ontario or Alberta. So like that's a very long distance. Canada is a huge country. It's a really massive carbon footprint to be putting down for local fibers. But I would like to be in a position where I can choose to take a day off, or I can get really busy and just forget to do something and forget to post, or go travel somewhere and have shitty Wi-Fi and be okay with that and not have to worry about whether it's going to affect my sales for the month. That's the ultimate goal. I think it's going to take time, but in the meantime, just figuring out how to make this sustainable for me, both as a person and also just making all of my choices more sustainable as far as environmental impact. And yeah.
Great.
Yeah.